had a little pajama jammy jam. I had to introduce them to like the house party style pajama jammy jam for my fourth graders. DJ Winkalicious was in the house. You know what I'm saying? Just throwing candy in the air. But like they just don't care. Like, you know, you got to have pressure releases throughout your week, year. So I just had a little press release and we had a little pajama jammy jam. So that's where we at.
Last week was our Winterfest Spirit Week. So Friday was Winter Jammies. So everybody knows like my little aesthetic. I give them a lot of purple and lavender. I found holiday jammies with snowmen, but they were lavender. The kids was like, D. Kelly, I see you. I'm like, but you realize that kids love it when the adults decide that they want to participate in the fun.
You got to.
They love to see it. So it really made me smile how many of like, I did the whole week of like participation. They were like, I see you, man. So I'm like, thanks, kids.
Yeah, our grades were due on Friday. And so it just made it difficult because we have finals leading up to Friday. And like, kids are like, I know I bombed my final, but what can I do to get my grade up? Or, hey, did you grade that thing I sent to you like last night at midnight? You know what I mean? Like, hey, you gotta trust the process. You gotta stay in the game. You can't sub yourself out of the game and then hope to have an outcome that you want. You have to, there's a consequence for you not showing up, because that's what it is. It's like just not showing up. You know, if you're present, you're gonna get something out of it. But for a lot of kids who just kept being absent for whatever reason, you know, and I had a kid just not show up at the final, and it's like,
Welcome to Level Up, the SEL Report, the only podcast that acknowledges that teaching today requires both a master's degree and a license in therapy. We are the K-12 triage team. Every episode, we're dissecting one crucial social-emotional skill, tracking its development or total breakdown from elementary all the way through high school graduation.
That's right. We're talking hits, misses, hilarious stories, and the undeniable truth about what our students actually need to survive post-high school, be that college, the workforce, or just successfully scheduling a doctor's appointment.
So settle in, pour a large cup of that highly necessary survival juice, and let's get into the only report card that truly matters. It's time to level up.
What up? This is Eric Royo, aka Wink, aka the Mike Professor, representing the elementary school domain. Been teaching all over the country, New York, Albuquerque, Florida, Hawaii, all with the sense of understanding what these elementary kids are going through. So holla at me.
What up? My name is Leevert Holmes, aka DJ Elbow Greasy. Having born and raised in Southern California, worked and lived out on the East Coast, and now back in California, and excited to work in the middle school domain and building bridges and developing relational capacity with students.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carla Kelly, a.k.a. Kels, Carla the Dean, the Gay. These kids call me all sorts of things, but this is my 17th year in education, and I've been in the public school space. I've been in the private school space. I've taught on the university level, and I really, really got to tell you, high school is my jam. I love them kids, and I really do feel like now in my new role as a dean, I'm trying to help these kids see the bigger picture, how to connect what they learn inside school to what they got to know how to do when they get on the outside. So I'm happy to be here.
Level up!
Last week, we talked about emotional literacy, right? Knowing what you feel. This week, we moved to the next logical step in self-awareness, right? Self-confidence and self-efficacy. So that's basically the belief that you can do something about what you feel, right? So like the post-K-12 goal here is resilience and productive failure, right? So the ability to keep working even after you experience a setback as a learner, right? And as a person. Because if you don't know who you are, like if you don't have that sense of self-awareness, you can't truly believe in what it is you're supposed to accomplish. You won't even think it's possible, you know?
Facts.
That's what we're going to be talking about this time.
in the elementary school, it's really all about seeing, right? Like a lot of elementary kids, that, just in general, they haven't developed that just ability. That prefrontal cortex isn't, fully developed. The ability to make decisions, the ability to kind of just keep pushing through and persevere. Um, Once I know I'm upset, once I know I'm stressed out, once I know something I'm doing is hard, I'm frustrated, I can't get through some work or a social interaction. What do you do next? So I'll see kids that will get stressed out and just bolt out the class. In the younger grades, the behaviors that they do are not connected to the feelings that they have. So they may a lot of times they'll try to take charge of a situation if they feel out of control. They're like, you know what? I don't understand how to do this. I'm frustrated. I'm upset. I don't have control. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do something crazy right now. I'm gonna climb up the board, you
Mm.
know, to bring attention to that. When they're faced with something that's difficult, a lot of kids do things that brings the control back to them. And a lot of times that's a disturbance, that's something violent, that's something where they know they're going to get a specific reaction that they have control. So it's really important that at that age, I'm trying to give them an out because they might not have the plan ahead. Like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to interact with this person. I'm stressed right now. They can identify it, but then like, what do they do next? So something I might have them do is I'll give them a ticket. I'll create a ticket, right? And then it's like we have a little lounge area. It's like ticket to the lounge. So it's like when you really stress and you can't get past that next step, you know what? Let me just get a ticket to the lounge. At least that's your first step. At least it lets me know, okay, I got to support them a little more. But they took a step. They didn't just bolt out the room. They didn't throw something. They didn't, do something to take control in a negative way. How do I get you to at least engage with the idea that you don't know what you're doing, you're stressed, you're struggling, and you can at least let me know in some way. And sometimes they can't verbalize it, but I'm like, here's a ticket. Took a ticket. They give it to me. Here you go, Mr. Royal. All right, that's cool. We out. Um, in the moment, I'm not trying to engage you with it. I'm not trying to come up to you and be like, hey. And I think that happens a lot. We kind of, certain teachers, either they scream or it's immediate, you got detention, or there's this approach of punishment when a kid has not developed the ability to do something like ask for help. And I'll just pass this to you, Leevert. Um, when they have that social status involved, where it becomes more connected to peer approval, right? Rather than being able to push through for themselves. What does that look like for you? Like, how does that manifest itself? How do you help kids who are struggling at something to have that self-efficacy and say, yeah, I need help? How do you have them help them support them to be able to ask questions?
I think is you you recognize that they're pulling out. You recognize that they're not as present as they could be. But then
Mm,
you also, rather than like you said, raising your voice at them or getting frustrated at them, I think it's important to try and develop a relationship with them because you don't know what they're going through for them to try to engage in this lesson that is challenging for them, especially with math. You don't know if a prior math teacher embarrassed them and made them feel stupid. And so,
That's
if you don't
express.
have that innate ability to see them as a kid, see them as yourself who once might have struggled in your life, and how do you communicate with them to say, "Hey, I see you there. You know what I mean? Good to see you. I'm gonna call on you now. You don't have the answer, kind of like phone a friend. I'll come back to you, but you don't like. I have a student that's selectively mute. I always call on that student, right? Like I let them know I see them. Like they're not, you know, um, they're not non-existent, and so I don't want to fall prey to whatever it is that they're going through. My goal is to let them know, like you say that there's this ticket. I'm this metaphorical ticket that's never going to go away. I'm going to always
mm,
acknowledge you when you're ready. Let me know, but you know that the invitation's there. So if you just so I had a situation where there was a student that I didn't do that and they weren't being present and I wasn't calling home and I wasn't checking in. And then I come to find out
mm,
like, their parent is or there's an adult figure in their life that has cancer. and they
Right.
feel like they, leaving home is like abandoning your, caregiver who's
Right.
there for them. So as an adult that works in school, my job should have been, let me reach out, we just check in, find out what's going on. But as I beat myself up about it, I also wonder, like, are my colleagues beating themselves up about it? Did they reach out? Those who was her
And
person
that's a good
last
point,
year?
man.
You know what I mean?
There's a lot of people who don't, man. There's a lot of people, and so it sounds like you do a lot of the work beforehand. You know what I'm saying? I think you got to front load the support. But what about like in terms of just the social connections and the peer pressure that there's kids who want to be clowns who kind of almost purposely sabotage themselves because they don't want to look intelligent in front of their friends or asking for help maybe looks at maybe has them not look as cool or whatever it is. Like, do you have situations, I don't know if that happens a lot in middle school, but I could imagine just that peer pressure behind wanting to get support.
Well, it's an interesting cultural divide in mathematics in San Francisco where uh you'll have our school is a majority minority school. So we have, black folk, Latinos, and Asians. And initially kids would literally say, don't ask me that question. I'm not Asian.
Mm,
And then you had some Asian kids who were good at math that would not participate, or they wouldn't ask questions when they were done with their work. They would just kind of sit there and not embrace the idea that, oh, what can I do next, right? Because the idea is that, well, you have the tools, you can do the work. Why are you choosing to kind of sit back, right? And so it's interesting. There were some of the Asian kids who just didn't want other people to know that they were smart, and
mm,
then some of the black or Latino kids were like, I'm going to project to you that I'm not going to try and I'm not smart. And it
That's
would, it
disturbing.
was destroying, my mental state because, you know, I, you know, I get the burden of some Asian students feeling like it's not fair. Everyone calls you smart. I'm also cool. And so I'm not gonna do additional work or help other kids if they have a question at my group. I'm going
mm,
to pull out my phone and start playing video games with my friends who are not Asian, so it doesn't appear as though I'm not cool with them, right? And then some of the
right.
black students are like, yeah, I'm not gonna really try. I'm just gonna rely on this Asian kid to try and help me because you're smart. And then
Yeah.
that kid doesn't want to ask a question of the teacher if they're uncertain of some. So it becomes like this weird
It's
dynamic
almost like
where,
the black and Latino kids are jumping into the stereotype where
my
the Asian kids
God.
are like avoiding the stereotype. You know what I'm
This
Yeah,
saying?
and
A
that's
little.
exactly what it
Right.
is.
That's wild.
But
Yeah,
nobody's avoiding the stereotype. Everyone's participating in stereotypes in the wrong
Mm,
ways. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
The
Right,
idea of equating certain types of intelligences in certain level, like in
right,
certain strains of
right,
thinking and certain abilities with this
right,
versus,
yeah,
phenotype and all the things.
right,
That
right.
really makes me sad that by the time
Yeah,
they get to middle school, I'm just
yeah.
thinking about these types of like entrenched ways of thinking
mm,
cutting these kids off. So because you may have a black girl sitting in the class who is an absolute math whiz.
What?
right.
So she may be like,
Yeah,
"This is gonna sound like if I'm the one with all the right answers, and they
yeah.
expect my best friend next to me, who's
Mm.
Filipina, to be the one to have all the right answers." Like that's just really like just the way you said. It, I was like,
Oh,
"Who
it
gave
it
who gave them this thinking? Who said black and
yeah,
brown people don't do math? We invented half the math, you know." So that's just
right.
really,
That's
oof.
not to mention their teacher's not Asian. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a black and a Latino teacher. You know what I mean?
It sounds like in middle school they're kind of trying to develop their identity. Where I'm
Yeah,
at, they don't really have an identity yet. They don't really understand. They may have some aspects of their culture and identity, but it's not really formed, and they're still kind of internally struggling. Where it's like middle school, it sounds like they're more like externally struggling. Like, man, I don't want to look like this in front of them. I don't want to connect with these people because I'm gonna be seen as that. And I know obviously that doesn't go away, by high school, but what does that look when these new things and more difficult topics come up?
It's interesting that you say that. It's like, because high school, it's like this really weird holding space, right? So you're the
Mm,
biggest of the kids and you're not yet an adult, right? So
right,
you have this whole unknown, wide open ocean of like possibility for better and for worse that's waiting after these 4 years. But you get here and you've just got 4 years and you've been through all this kind of stuff. So I find that a lot of times, if you have the right, depending on who you're talking to, a lot of kids see ninth grade as a chance to kind of shake off whatever they were known as or seen as, whatever type of stuff they had going on, socially, like socially in up until 8th grade. When they get to ninth grade, they get to decide, here I am, and present themselves as the way they want to present themselves, right? So that can be like, so some kids, they really see the opportunity that way. And it's like, then it's like, whatever they got picked on before, we don't know where they came from. We don't know what the jokes were in middle school. So now they are cool because they said
right,
so. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's one kind of thing. Then there's also like this tension, right? Everybody wants to be the best eventually, but kids also struggle with the idea of, you have to build these muscles. So you have the kids who sometimes want to put themselves out there when they feel confident, but then there's the fight, right? I don't want to look stupid either.
mm,
So there's like this really interesting tension, because you want to stand out, but you want to stand out for the right reasons,
right,
and you want to blend in the right way. So I feel like there's like a back and forth tension as far as what's my identity, as far as how I feel inside myself versus
right,
how do I want to show up in these spaces. So I think ninth grade is really an interesting turning point, and usually the kids who have been able to fly under the radar or kinda get by kinda blending in, ninth grade usually agitates so much, those personality traits kind of fight their way to the surface,
in
right?
terms of academics or in terms of just the social connect
It's both.
interactions.
It's
Yeah,
both, right? Because in high school, it's really hard to separate the academics from the social.
mm,
Right? Because there's this pressure, right? We know at some point we're all going to apply to some kind of post-secondary, right? Whether it's college, trade school, whatever. We're going to have these grades. We're going to have these numbers. So you have to accomplish something. But
right,
there's the private accomplishment that you and your teacher know about what time it is versus pick me, pick me, pick me. I talk out in class. Because so that's a personality thing sometimes. So it's interesting because depending on how you want to be seen, that
mm,
shows that'll dictate how you show up academically in certain spaces. You know, at some point, you're gonna have to stand out from your peers. You just never
right.
quite know when that moment's gonna be. So there's, like, a really interesting tension, and you never know when the kids who are in those cliques are gonna bust out and need to be seen as individuals. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting. At some point, it pops.
No, for sure.
When
But I feel like I know there are kids who just don't do well in school because they struggle, right? How do you support them? Because I know you work as a dean, so you see a lot of kids, not necessarily just academically, but you know a lot about their academics because you see all of them. How do you support them to have them understand, like, look, yeah, you ain't do well in this grade, right? This is not the end of your semester. It's not the end of your year. You still like there's other skills for you to develop now. Pick yourself up off the ground. Here's what you got to do. Move ahead forward to be successful, because ultimately that's kind of the goal. Once they leave high school or leave the education system, you're on your own now. You need to push yourself. So how do you support them that to have them be able to push themselves when there is failure, whether social failure or academic failure? I don't have a lot of friends. How do you now push them forward to say, look, here's some data. This is all the failures you had. It's not negative. It's just data for you to now to be successful moving forward.
I talk about big from the bigger picture of things, right? I always kind of let kids know life is not a multiple choice test. You don't
Mm,
have to write essays in life, right? You're developing the skills right now. This is the time where you're supposed to not know everything. Like, really kind of like framing high school as a place where, oh, no, 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 you're supposed to have more questions and answers right now. This is the time, like, I just kind of framing it like, this is your last 4 years to gather everything you need to, ask as many questions as you can, and take advantage of what you don't know. Because when you get out there are things people are going to expect you to know. So being okay with not knowing everything right now sets you up to learn what you need to know for when you're gonna need it. So I
Right.
really do try to like frame high school rather than the end of a thing, but as the bridge. Right?
Mm.
Like, this is the place to gather everything. So what are we confused about? What's up with this reading comprehension anyway? Can we write cursive? Do we have a signature? Like, just kind of framing it from there is just some skills you're gonna need in the grander scheme of things. Can you problem solve? Can you think your way through? Okay, you made a really bad mistake and now you're in detention. Let's talk about choices. Let's discuss your decision making, right? Because I'm looking at it from a when you get out there, meaning
Mm.
graduation, there are
Yeah.
just some things people are gonna expect you to know.
That just makes me think, and I'm gonna pass to you in a second, Lever, because I want to get your input on what that looks like. But from what I see, I have an opportunity at elementary age to like reward that effort over, okay, they know everything, the mastery of what's happening. Because like you said, I want them to understand that trying things as much as possible and keep pushing and giving that effort is almost more important than knowing things. Um, and just in terms of like middle school, Lever, or just your opinion, how do we build that internal validation for kids? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. I think it's okay in middle school to, unfortunately, I think some parents will see it as talking to them like an adult, like acknowledging that because they're being exposed to so many things in the real world. And if you're like, I'm gonna wait until you get to high school to tell you about this or talk to you about that, it's
Right.
like
And just so
they're
you know, the
already
prefrontal cortex is still not developed yet.
no
It's
at
like
all.
20s, you know what I'm saying? So they're still kids. They're still, and I think
Yeah.
people forget that because
And
of the
if
size or the attitudes.
and they forget now, still, I'm not saying you don't, like, to Carla's point, and I love it as a brilliant point, the idea that this is the time to learn. It's yeah, I think for middle school, you're taking what's happening in the real world and you're contextualizing it for them. You're adding the annotated parts of the book. And so I was bringing like, you must put a period at the end of your sentence and hello, you speak to me as Mr. Holmes. And I wasn't being my most authentic self. So I didn't know
Mm,
how to respond where kids are like, I'm showing you where I'm at right now, whether you like it or not. This is who I am. What's up? And I was like, nah, this energy is not cool for me. I'm not, because I'm not being who I am. And so once they stripped me of who I was and I had no other option but to be myself, I could really connect to not only where they were at, but like what I'm able to provide for them in their lives. Sometimes our egos get in the way and we're not okay of showing kids that we just learned something from them, whether they did
right.
something great or not. It's like we're not cognizant of it.
Yeah, and what they know and not what they know and don't know, I really do stress. I mean, you might remember some of this math, you might remember this science, but the learning how to learn is the point.
Mm,
Being able to recognize when you don't know something rather than
right.
being like, "I don't get it," being able to, like, break it down and go, "Okay, I got stuck here."
Yeah.
Take a moment, pause, that are like, is it it's that part, it's the ability to learn and the ability to know when you're confused. It's just certain like the metacognitive aspects from that point, that matters so much more than can you remember all the presidents who did whatever or who wrote the
Yeah.
Gettysburg Address and all the
Right.
things these kids
No,
have
for
to remember
sure.
in high school. Like, can you figure out what you don't know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you let the person who has the information, how do you let them know what you need? So this idea of self-efficacy and being able to speak up, it's that part. And really have like a lot of my work with my students, whether it's been in the classroom, and this is really just piggybacking on what you're saying, Lever, and what you're saying, Wink, it's like, do you know how to think?
Hmm.
And can you think in concert with other people?
Yeah.
Can you think when other people don't think the same thing you think? Like, it's just like a lot of times, especially with as the dean now, who's responsible to things like discipline and stuff, a lot of that does come down to problem solving, thinking, decision making, you know, being able to say what you need when it's a small situation rather than letting it blow up. And now you fist fighting in the yard. We could have had a little mediated conversation to shut all that down 2 weeks ago. So a lot of that really does, it comes really back to this idea of how do you bring in every bit of information and use that to figure out what to do next? So you are constantly learning because life doesn't have multiple choice tests. It's
and
the
and it
other side.
sounds like just from what you guys are talking about, and I do this as well, um, a little bit more structured, but we need to provide space where they can practice these skills with when the outcomes are kind of not I won't say predetermined, but we can manufacture the situations a little bit, and I do it, with like a little bit of role playing and things like that, where it's very much more kind of explicit, and maybe you guys do it in terms of how you set tables up. Maybe you see people who don't work well together, right? Like, how are they going to react? Because you can kind of monitor that. Um, but just before we go, maybe there's, that's just kind of my one piece of takeaway to people listening, to maybe something they can do in their classrooms or with students. What's like one piece of advice or one piece of strategy that maybe you can um, give out to people to help them support kids to grow that self-efficacy, to be able to speak out. As I mentioned, I try to just manufacture situations in the classroom where there's still a safe space where they can make those mistakes, but still be able to practice communicating and speaking up for themselves. What's something that you guys think that either you've done or what you would like to do in your classrooms and spaces? Whoever want to jump in.
Go, Leevert.
Um, yeah, I used to do something called Math Cafe, and
Mm,
I would enough. I wasn't getting enough students coming at lunchtime upstairs, and so I started talking to my colleagues. And it's like, yo, what if we go to the cafeteria? Like, just bring some math or play some math games with them at the cafeteria. Like, would you do that? And the reason why I was encouraged to do it is one of the teachers was like, yo, what if they start throwing food at you? Like, I'm not trying to get hit with green peas. And I was like, you know what? I'm definitely going now because, I'll be damned if I get hit with some damn string beans. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't going to do that.
the
And I had to,
audacity.
right. I had in my mind that they wouldn't do it. And they never did. But, it was refreshing because the kids, I met them where they were. Like, whether they want to do math or not, it just became a top opportunity for us to just have lunch together, just to break bread together. So I think providing opportunities where it is a safe space and they feel comfortable, and it's not the pressure of, oh, the bell's about to ring, I gotta get this assignment done, oh, we gotta do the quick do now, and like, no, this is, hey, where are you at?
No, that's
And, oh,
dope.
do you want
That's a
to
relaxed
you want to ask
environment.
me about my wife? Okay, I can tell you about, right. So like, I think I want to do more of creating those spaces
Mm.
for kids, especially knowing that oftentimes in math they already have these anxieties. So where can I meet them where they are?
And then you Holmes, the dude, and just chilling with us in the lunchroom. You're not
Right,
you're not Mr.
right,
Holmes, the math
right,
teacher.
right,
You just
right.
because y'all can walk away. I don't have to stay here the whole time. But it
Not at
seems
all.
chill. We
Yeah,
chilling.
yeah,
What
we
what you
chilling.
think, Carla? What you looking like in
I
high
think
school?
I think in high school, really valuing the power of questions. So tell me
Mm,
about so and so. Like really coming to kids in an open-ended question type of space. I get so much more information out of them than if
mm,
I want to come with them with what I think I see. So a lot of times I may think I know what's going on. I'm like, so what's up with you and Mr. So and so? Like if I feel
right.
like tension between them and a teacher. And once
Yeah.
they spill it all, I was just like, well, here's what you could do. You know what I mean? So really
Mm,
just kind of coming with open-ended questions usually give positions me to give kids a little like tidbit of useful advice for them to kind of churn on and then kind of build on it. And then they'll come back like, yo, I did so and so. So this is what happened. What you think? You know
mm,
what I mean? So just kind of like making the idea of it's a process, right? So the
yeah.
importance of having questions and being like, so what's up with so and so? I might have thoughts. I could be 100% right or wrong, but leaving my space to know nothing and let them fill in all the blanks helps me be more effective in the kind of supports or the advice that I'll give them as far as what their next steps could be.
Yeah. It really just sounds like as teachers, we got to understand that we have many different roles. Sometimes it's the educator of academics. Sometimes it's educator of just social emotional skills, and sometimes it's just the chill person who just kicking it with you. Um, and just each one teach one. We just hanging out. I'm not an authority figure necessarily right now. I'm just someone who can support you, who can ask some questions. Let's play some cool games. Um, and you got to be in that relaxed mode as well. You can't always be this big separation between. I think those days are gone, right? I think that's what creates that kind of school to prison pipeline when they see you as the guard or as the warden and not as someone I can connect with. Then there's detention and things of that nature. So that's how we try to look and to build the self-efficacy with kids, give them someone who can support them, to have them feel relaxed, to be able to talk more, to be able to open up more, and to be able to just express for themselves, man. It's really about speaking up for yourself, and that's what we're trying to promote. So appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for joining us. Level Up, social emotional learning. Join us next time. We're going to shift to self-management. How do we help them support the impulse controls that they may have to make better decisions? So this is us. Peace.